on one side, I can see that there are gains to be made, that people who generally do not really think about where their water comes from or how land and water and climate and energy are all interconnected, I can see how that helps them gain some insight into the problem and gain some sensitivity. But on the other hand, it seems to me that we lose a number of possible ways forward or openings. A number of openings get closed off by using this security/nexus discourse. And I think those three things are one, that what should be a social project becomes this kind of national security issue where 8 million children are dying yearly from dysentery and waterborne disease and things like that. That's a massive calamity and a social issue that we should be concerned with. And yet, if we talk about security and states, these sorts of collective social problems get parceled out to different governments, and then it becomes questions of capability and good governance and so on and so forth. So they become, in some ways, domesticated. A second loss is that what I think should be a public good, that everybody should have enough water and everybody should be able to feed themselves and so on and so forth, through the security narrative, becomes a privatized kind of commodity that companies then see a way of making money around these things, while states at the same time envision ways that they can, privileged elites find a way that they can capture the good and hang on to it. If they think of it as a scarce good and that must be made secure, obviously they're going to think it should be made secure for them, and oftentimes it's for them vis-a-vis other state actors and so on. So again, it leads us down that road. And I think perhaps most importantly, because words do matter, and the kind of words we use, if we talk about security, it invokes a certain kind of conceptualization of an issue. Whereas if we talk about, that there are social injustice or there are human rights issues, it leads us down a different path. And I think that by talking about water and other resources within a nexus attached to security, forces us down a kind of a blue water pathway. That there's certain kinds of water that we capture through dams and pipes and canals and for irrigation and for cities and so on that must be captured, and we lose the ability to think about what water is, what colors water comes in. So I think that, for example, the World Bank discovering that there's something called green water is fantastic, because if, to be frank, when we talk about wars over water, you can actually say that all wars are over water because they're fought over land, and these are arable lands, and arable lands are really green water. There's lots of water problems, and there are lots of human problems because of lack of certain kinds of water, be it water for agriculture, water for cities, water for human consumption, and so on. Partly it is a political issue that actors who have water are not really interested in those people who don't have water. Usually the people who don't have water have the least amount of power, and except their voting power, and so if we could mobilize them, maybe there'd be more attention paid to them. It's also partly a resource issue. It's a financial issue. So how do you then divert resources being used in one area to resources you think should be used productively in another area where they're going to have a lot of purchase? So oftentimes you try to frame the issue in a certain way, and I think in some ways this is where the nexus discourse comes from, that we're actually trying to find a way to entice people who are not really interested into being interested. And if you take, for example, the use of the water wars dialogue, that in fact trying to get the attention of influential individuals in the world and influential organizations in the world, you sometimes overstate the case. And I think by claiming that the wars of the future will be over water, is an example of doing that. And I think you could actually say quite with a lot of confidence that all wars are water wars, because we fight over land, and land is made up of green water, the arability, where you can grow food. I mean, that's the real water war. But my problem with with these sorts of narratives is that once you entice influential actors through a security narrative, then you better be ready for the kind of attention that it's going to bring.